Welcome to the Buddhistisches Tor Berlin podcast. Here we share talks and reflections from our Buddhist center in Berlin, exploring themes such as meditation, ethics, and the path of awakening in everyday life. We are part of the Triratna Buddhist community, and our talks are offered freely in a spirit of generosity. We hope this episode supports your practice and your life.
The theme, you could say, the theme of today's talk is, it doesn't sound very appealing really. It's actually, what we're going to be looking at is unpleasant feeling. So I'm going to be exploring unpleasant feeling. And actually, interestingly enough, today, I was kind of gifted with two things. So one of them was a certain level of anxiety. And the other one was it was very interesting actually, like you have like a theme that you're going to talk about. And then so I was meditating in here, and basically throughout pretty much the whole of the meditation, I had a pain in the middle of my back. So the kind of question that was coming to my mind is that working with that kind of physical sensation, is that wasted meditation? And I would say no, actually. I would say, well, depending on what happens. So what I would say is that the way I was trying to work, which is kind of related to the talk, means that the meditation was very useful in lots of different ways. So it wasn't dhyanic. It wasn't like kind of I was in higher states of consciousness. I wasn't in a state of bliss. I was actually with unpleasant physical sensation. That's kind of what was the main thing in my experience, and that's what I was working with. That's not always the case, but it's interesting how it just really came today, given that I'm giving this talk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a sutta called the Sallatha Sutta, and it's a sutta from the Buddha, and the Buddha's talking to some monks. So I'm going to read through that, and then I'm going to explain it bit by bit, kind of, and also I'll talk about it in language that is hopefully a bit more understandable. So as I read through the sutta, it might be that you don't get everything, or you're not quite sure what this, that, and the other means. That's fine. This will just be the starting point, and then I'll start to go into it and how it's applicable to our lives. So here goes. Monks, an uninstructed run-of-the-mill person feels feelings of pleasure, feelings of pain, feelings of neither pleasure nor pain. A well-instructed disciple of the noble ones also feels feelings of pleasure, feelings of pain, feelings of neither pleasure nor pain. So what difference, what distinction, what distinguishing factor is there between the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones and the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person? So you could kind of say, what's the difference between a practitioner, someone that's practicing meditation, that knows how to work with their mind, and just on ordinary, everyday, whatever, Joe Bloggs? As the Buddha says, a run-of-the-mill person. Not so nice, is it really? But there you go. For us, Lord, the teachings have the Blessed One as their root, their guide, and their arbitrator. It would be good if the Blessed One himself would explicate the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from the Blessed One, the monks will remember it. So that's quite funny, I think, is that the Buddha asked the monks a question, and basically the monks kind of get out of it by saying, well, why don't you tell us the answer, please, Buddha? Anyway. So in that case, monks, listen and pay close attention. I will speak. "As you say, Lord," the monks responded. The Blessed One said, "When touched with a feeling of pain, the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person sorrows, grieves, and laments, beats his breast, becomes distraught, so he feels two pains, physical and mental. Just as if they were to shoot a man," so obviously he's talking to monks, "with an arrow, and right afterwards were to shoot him with another one, so that he would feel the pains of two arrows. In the same way, when touched with a feeling of pain, the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person sorrows, grieves, laments, beats his breast, becomes distraught. So he feels two pains, physical and mental. As he is touched by that painful feeling, he is resistant. Any resistance obsession with regard to that painful feeling obsesses him. Touched by that painful feeling, he delights in sensual pleasure. Why is that? Because the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person does not discern any escape from painful feeling aside from sensual pleasure. As he is delighting in sensual pleasure, any passion obsession with regard to that feeling of pleasure obsesses him. So I know the language is a bit complicated. He does not discern, as it actually is present, the origination, the passing away, allure, drawback, or escape from that feeling. As he does not discern the origination, passing away, allure, drawback, or escape from that feeling, then any ignorance obsession with regard to that feeling of neither pleasure nor pain obsesses him. Sensing a feeling of pleasure, he senses it as though joined with it. Sensing a feeling of pain, he senses it as though joined with it. Sensing a feeling of neither pleasure nor pain, he senses it as though joined with it. This is called an uninstructed run-of-the-mill person joined with birth, aging, and death, with sorrows, lamentations, pains, distresses, and despairs. He is joined, I tell you, with suffering and stress. Now, the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones, when touched with a feeling of pain, does not sorrow, grieve, or lament, does not beat his breast or become distraught. So he feels one pain, physical, but not mental, just as if they were to shoot a man with an arrow and right afterwards did not shoot him with another one, so that he would feel the pain of only one arrow. In the same way, when touched with a feeling of pain, the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones does not sorrow, grieve, or lament, does not beat his breast or become distraught. He feels one pain, physical, but not mental. As he is touched by the painful feeling, he is not resistant. No resistance obsession with regard to that painful feeling obsesses him. Touched by that painful feeling, he does not delight in sensual pleasure. Why is that? Because the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones discerns an escape from the painful feeling aside from sensual pleasure. As he is not delighting in sensual pleasure, no passion obsession with regard to that feeling of pleasure obsesses him. He discerns as it actually is present the origination, passing away, allure, drawback, and escape from that feeling. As he discerns the origination, passing away, allure, drawback, and escape from that feeling, no ignorance obsession with regard to that feeling of neither pleasure nor pain obsesses him. Sensing a feeling of pleasure, he senses it disjoined from it. Sensing a feeling of pain, he senses it disjoined from it. Sensing a feeling of neither pleasure nor pain, he senses it disjoined from it. This is called a well-instructed disciple of the Noble Ones, disjoined from birth, aging, and death. From sorrows, lamentations, pains, distresses, and despairs. He is disjoined, I tell you, from the suffering and stress. This is the difference. This is the distinction. This is the distinguishing factor between the well-instructed disciple of the Noble Ones and the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person. The discerned person, learned, doesn't sense a mental feeling of pleasure or pain. This is the difference in skillfulness between the sage and the person run-of-the-mill. For a learned person who has fathomed the Dharma, clearly seeing this world and the next, desirable things don't charm the mind. Undesirable ones bring no resistance. His acceptance and rejection are scattered, gone to their end, do not exist. So this particular teaching for me it's kind of like a bedrock actually of my practice in a way. And so I'm going to kind of go through it bit by bit and try to clarify it more and more. So it starts off with this thing about the two arrows, doesn't it? That somebody is either, so when somebody experiences pain, it's a bit like being shot with an arrow, and then it's almost as if straight away on top of that, they're shot with a second arrow. And the way it's talked about in the sutta is that the first arrow is physical and the second arrow is mental. So the way that I tend to think about this, and this has not come from me actually, it's from Breathworks, so where I did some training, kind of like mindfulness training. They talk about primary experience and secondary suffering. So this also comes because the person that founded Breathworks, Vidyamala, she's got a very severe long-term pain condition. So she's living with physical pain all of the time. It's just degrees of pain, really. So she worked with that for a long time, and then she was obviously looking at things like this sutta. This is where it kind of comes from. And then she made this distinction, I think it was her, of primary experience and secondary suffering. So, oh yeah, this is the other thing as well that I'll say. So I'm using this flip chart, partly it's going to be more like a reference point for you after the talk. So I don't know whether, like you people at the back, whether you can see this very small writing on this side. Can you? No. Okay. That's fine. Yeah, I might come back to that in a minute. So basically, if I was going to fill out this sense of primary experience and secondary suffering, yeah. So when I begin to meditate, and this is kind of to some degree, how I teach when I'm teaching people that are new to meditation, what I'm trying to see is that what is present in my experience at this moment. So is what is present in my experience, is it physical? So that means sensations in the body. So at the moment, I can feel like a kind of tingling in my feet. It might mean like something coming in through the senses. So any of the senses, kind of hearing, smelling. Generally, when we're meditating, a lot of the time the eyes are closed. So some of the senses are not so prominent, but maybe hearing with meditation. But any of the senses, actually. And also that as there is sensation appearing, if that's what my attention is with, is that sensation pleasant? Is it neutral, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant? Or is it painful? Now, in a way, it doesn't matter. You might disagree with this. It doesn't matter that the feeling tone is unpleasant. What I know that is, if I'm with an unpleasant feeling tone, I'm with primary experience. So when I was meditating before and I said I had this kind of like sensation in my back, in the middle of my back, it was unpleasant. It was an unpleasant feeling tone. So this is primary experience, yeah? That's what I'm looking at when I sit down. So am I with primary experience? Or am I with something else? Am I more with emotion? Am I more with thinking? Am I lost in thinking? Am I imagining? Now, that might not necessarily be secondary suffering. But maybe you'll see in a minute why that could be called secondary suffering. So this is one thing that's important, particularly for those of you that have not heard this before. In Buddhism, we make a distinction between feeling, so feeling tone, pleasant, painful, and neutral, and emotion. So pleasant feeling comes before emotion. Emotion is a bit more, don't know, can't find the word for it, whatever that is, this kind of like, it's a bit more bigger, what did you say? Loaded, well, sometimes it could be loaded. Anyway, maybe I'll come back to that. No, not fundamental. Possibly dramatic, yeah. But anyway, so what I'm saying is, what I'm looking for at the beginning of meditation is I'm looking to see where I am. Am I with primary experience, or am I with secondary suffering, or at least with thinking and emotion? When that has been established, that gives me a sense of where do I go next? What do I do? What do I need to do? So the way this is sometimes talked about, the way the movement from primary experience to secondary suffering unfolds, is that, well, it either unfolds in two ways. So when we experience pleasant feeling, we crave, or we want it, we want more of it. When we experience unpleasant feeling, we don't want it, so we push away. So it kind of goes contact, feeling, and then if it's unpleasant feeling, aversion, and then grasping, becoming. Yeah, so you kind of create a habit of reacting to unpleasant feeling. That's one way of talking about it. Another way of talking about it is in dependence on contact and feeling and interpretation. So what we experience is interpreted. Then it moves into thinking about our emotion and mental proliferation. So that means that there is kind of spreading, a proliferating, that kind of experience becomes more and more kind of dense, more and more fabricated, more and more solid. So that gives you a sense of these two things. So primary experience and secondary suffering. So if, for instance, as I was sat there kind of meditating, and because this is the thing, isn't it? We say, okay, so follow the breath, follow the breath, follow the breath, follow the breath, follow the breath. Sounds very easy. But other things come in, don't they? Thought comes in, emotion comes in, sometimes unpleasant physical sensation comes in. As we're meditating. And then what I'm trying to explore is like, well, what do we do about that then? Like, kind of, do we just carry on? Do we just grit our teeth and kind of like, and just push through? No, actually, there's quite a lot that you can do when you begin to experience unpleasant feeling. in the body. I'll get onto this in a little while. So at the bottom, what we've got kind of what the Buddha was talking about, in that sense of just being hit with the first arrow. So we've got contact. So that would just mean that because we've got a body and it's got senses and there's a sense of touch, that as we sit to meditate, a felt sense arises. And in this case, in this sutta, the felt sense is unpleasant. And what we've got here, so some of you will kind of recognize what this is a gap. There's a possibility of a gap. So that means that the reaction doesn't have to happen. It might happen, and if it does happen, then we come back again to primary experience. But it doesn't have to happen. The gap is created by being with things as they are. By being, if I am able to be more with physical sensation as it is, then I don't go into thinking about it and proliferating. So I suppose as an example, I get this pain in my back as I'm sat there meditating, and then I start to think, oh, I need to adjust my posture. Oh, this has been going on for a week, I need to go and see the doctor. And then I start to think about where my doctor is, and then I start to imagine telephoning the doctor, and because my German's not so good, I get a little bit anxious because I'm going to have to talk on the phone in German, and I'm in this whole thing. I'm meditating, I'm here, sat in the room, but I'm kind of not. I'm at that point at the end, I was sort of trying to phone the doctor with my okay-ish German. So it's like noticing that and kind of coming back to the primary experience. So what is the primary experience? Oh, throbbing, or kind of jagged, or kind of tight, or contracted. All of that is the physical sensation. What comes on top of that is how I move from physical sensation, and how I compound it, and how I create my own suffering as a result of that. So in a way, the whole thing is, it's like if we can reduce the secondary suffering, or if we can somehow see through that, our whole relationship changes to what is happening. There is a possibility of escape. Escape does not mean ignoring. Yeah, this kind of, maybe again I'll come on to what escape might mean. So this is another way of kind of looking at the same thing. So sort of three steps. So the first one is that you experience something unpleasant in the body. Now, partly the reason why I'm saying this as well is because the way experience unfolds is that independence on contact arises feeling. So this is happening both when we're sitting in meditation, but it's happening in everyday life. So when if we're going down more the line of unpleasant feeling, when the person we don't like walks in the door, not Tim, he's lovely. when the person we dislike walks through the door, we experience something. We have an unpleasant feeling. What is that? That's an interesting question. Like possibly contraction, or kind of like, oh, that might be just what happens. It's just a sense of like, oh, no, not them. I was hoping he wasn't going to come on Saturday. They said that they wasn't going to come, and here they are. So unpleasant feeling. And then there is resistance. Resistance to that. It's kind of like, in a way, the resistance is also a bit like a kind of jumping off, or a jumping away from, or a not wanting to be with. And as that happens, and as that gets more and more kind of compounded, we suffer. And then there's this little thing that you might remember, which is quite good. What we resist persists. So what this is about, this resistance, it's about relationship. So we have an unpleasant feeling in the body. That's all it is. We might not like it, but it's just unpleasant. And we have a relationship to that. Because it's unpleasant, we don't want it, do we? Be honest. So that's our relationship to it. I don't want it. But already that not wanting it is a resistance. It's like something has started to become bigger than it is. And when we resist or when we ignore, it doesn't help. It kind of, in a sense, it sort of compounds the situation. It's a bit like we've got this pain, and the pain is saying to us, hello, hello, come on, look at me, please, give me some attention. And you just go, no, I'd rather not do that. Hello, come on, just look at me. Like, no thanks, no thank you very much. Do you think this pain is going to be very, very happy about that? Not really. We know what it's like to be ignored. One other thing that I also, maybe this is going off in a slightly different direction, but I definitely want to say it. Part of the reason why I'm also giving this talk is because at the moment I'm doing a meditation course with Arya Bandhu, and a number of people have mentioned unpleasant physical sensations and what to do about that. And also what I've heard is a kind of view. So the view is that we have to stick with it, yeah? We have an unpleasant physical sensation and we have to stay with that. A bit like, again, is this sense of like grimming and bearing it. And we sort of think this is Buddhist practice. It's all about unpleasant physical sensation. This is what we're working with. This is what we're trying to work with, or maybe even we want to get rid of them, yeah? But actually, if you look at what, for instance, meditation, where it is leading, it's not that, actually. If you know anything about Buddhist meditation, you know that Buddhist meditation can lead you into higher states of consciousness, the dhyanas. If you know anything about Buddhist meditation, you know that Buddhist meditation has got this element of vipassana, which is seeing through. Both of those things are pleasant. Moving into higher states of consciousness is like deeper and deeper levels of pleasure and happiness. So don't get trapped thinking that Buddhism is about just being with pain and grimming and bearing it and just changing pain. It's not, actually. There's lots of pleasure to be had within Buddhism. And Vipassana, the kind of more insight element, is completely liberating. And when we see through, when there's a moment of seeing through, that is freeing, delightful, blissful, kind of spacious. Yeah. So I'm kind of saying that because this is where we're looking today. We're looking at pain, but actually in the bigger context, there's a hell of a lot of pleasure, actually. So the way that it works in the sutta is that the Buddha starts from this point of view of unpleasant feeling, and then he says there's a resistance to that, and then there is suffering, and then the movement, the next movement, is definitely not being with it. It's actually just get away. Yeah. So the get away is delight in sensual pleasures. So we feel something unpleasant, and well, we all know this, I know this. It's like I feel something unpleasant and I reach for the chocolate biscuits or whatever it kind of might be. What can I do to get myself away from this because it's not pleasant? And the way that I was kind of thinking about this was like, so we have an unpleasant feeling, like I was saying, this sense of what was going on in the back. It seems like a problem. So because it seems like well, in a certain sense, from the body's point of view, maybe it is a problem. That's the body's telling you this is a problem. There's pain in your back here. I don't know, we need to do something about this. So then, because there's a sense of problem, we need to find a solution. So in a way, the thinking mind is like a kind of, it's a problem-solving machine. It's like, if we really notice, like kind of when we start to experience difficulty, we very quickly go into, how can I sort this out? How can I solve this? What can I do about this? Yeah. So I need to find a solution. Then the next thing could be, sometimes we can't find one. Like this is the problem with people with chronic pain, is that there isn't a way out, actually. There's degrees of chronic pain. There's degrees of unpleasant physical sensation. Well, the Buddha said actually with his own body near the end of his life that the only way out of unpleasant physical sensation was to go into higher states of consciousness. But when his consciousness came back down, then he would be experiencing physical pain. But somebody in this situation, like kind of you've got chronic pain, you look for a solution, but you can't find one. There isn't a solution, actually. Well, not completely. So then you distract yourself. Now, what I'll also say is, don't be so hard on yourself in relationship to distraction. So sometimes it's fine to distract yourself. Maybe it is the best thing to do. Maybe it's the best you can do kind of at the moment to kind of, I don't know, whatever is your form of distraction. But again, this is the thing, like kind of be, maybe we need to refine our distractions a bit. Maybe that will be a step in the right direction. Yeah. So I'm not saying don't ever distract yourself. I'm not saying don't stay all of the time with physical pain. Yeah, so the way it goes in the sutta is that there's a painful feeling, there's resistance, and then there's suffering. Because you resist the unpleasant feeling, then you sorrow, you grieve, you lament, you beat your breast, you become distraught. Yeah. So at this point, it's like the physical sensation has become something very big, and you sense that there is no escape from it. And maybe you're really kind of like, you're really cooking that up in your mind. Like maybe my example was not so extreme. But again, when you meditate, what you realize is that the mind very quickly goes to extremes. So an extreme with physical pain is, I've got a physical pain in my back. And where you suddenly find yourself within 2 jumps is that I've got cancer of the bones. This is what your mind tells you. Yeah. This is how it is. It's kind of like it's really extreme sometimes, the mind. And then it starts to think about the solution to cancer of the bones. It's like you've just got an unpleasant physical sensation in your back. That's it. So what is that like? Kind of throbbing, burning, kind of like tight, whatever. That's it. So what I want to say a little bit about now is, so how do we work with unpleasant feeling? So I'm going to give you a few different ways of doing that. So what the Buddha says is that unpleasant feeling, like for the average run-of-the-mill person, probably what we're like most of the time, we're average run-of-the-mill people, the painful feeling is not discerned as it actually is present. The origination, the passing away, the allure, the drawback, the escape. So I'm not going to go into all of that. You could say, from a certain perspective, the origination, you could even go further back than this, but one answer might be that the origination is the fact that I've got a body and I've got senses. One of those senses is touch. So therefore, I experience feeling, pleasant, painful, neutral, just because I've got a body. That's where it originates, yeah? But this, no, maybe I'll come back to that, the passing away. So one way of working with unpleasant physical pain is that, so this kind of teaching, it's sometimes called the what is it called? The bigger container of awareness. So what that means is, so you're meditating or you're in your life, maybe you're meditating, you experience an unpleasant physical sensation. So sometimes it's not so bad and you can just stay with the breath. Sometimes maybe you need to do something about that. So that's a choice. So the bigger container of awareness. So this physical, unpleasant physical sensation in the body. What else am I noticing? So as my eyes are open, so I'm going to kind of pretend to meditate. As my eyes are open, well, obviously I can see all of you. And what I also notice is kind of light, kind of hitting a few of you. That's quite beautiful, actually. I can feel other sensations in my body. I can feel like a kind of a rising of energy in the body. I can feel sensations in my feet. I can feel my breath kind of moving in and out. And just by kind of being there, I also noticed like kind of, oh right, there's just a sense of relaxation. So I suppose it's like as I'm opening out my awareness more and more, the physical sensation, the painful physical sensation is not the only thing in my experience. So it becomes one thing among many within a broad, spacious awareness. So awareness can also be something that you notice, actually. Oh, there's awareness. Awareness is there also. So this is the bigger container. The other thing that you can do with unpleasant physical sensation is, which comes back to this, passing away. So painful feeling not discerned as it actually is present. So that is the part of the problem, actually, that when we experience unpleasant physical sensation, we see it the wrong way. We don't see it as it actually is. We see it as something fixed, solid, enduring, not going to go away. So we don't see it as impermanent, changing, flux. So another way of working with this is that now you have also perhaps need to be a bit careful with this, perhaps, is that you can decide, so this is the other thing, it's a decision. You decide to move a little bit towards it. Yeah, the unpleasant sensation is there, and you decide to move a bit towards it. And the image that's sometimes given is of a bale of hay. Do you know what a bale of hay is? Yeah. So you've got a bale of hay, so it's quite soft, that's the pain. And your attention, so you're the kind of your attention, and you sort of lean into it a little bit, and you lean out, and you lean in, and you lean out. You lean in as much as you want to, you stay as long as you want to, and you can always lean out. Yeah. That's a probably quite a safe way of doing it. But in some respects, it is only an unpleasant physical sensation. It isn't the end of the world, honestly, it isn't. So what happens, so this is the other thing I would say, that meditation is also like a kind of play, really. You play with things and see what happens. What happens if I take my attention in to that place? You could use a question, what do I notice? And what you're looking for is change. This is really important, I think. I sort of think sometimes this is the kind of the key that is sometimes missing in people's practicing. It's a little bit more from the direction of vipassana or seeing things as they are. You're looking at your experience from the perspective of impermanence or change. So as you go in, what do I notice? There might be description, or it's kind of like vibrating, or it feels quite dense. But I suppose as you stay with that dense, maybe what you begin to notice is that dense has got a life. Yeah, it's physical sensation, it's got a life, and it's moving and it's changing. So one of the things that you've done is, so if resistance is a kind of ignoring, a sort of turning away, this is just turning towards and being willing to be with. And what starts to happen, the more you see the sensation as change, is that there is a sense of letting go, and there is a sense of letting be that kind of begins to happen. You'll notice that everything begins to sort of open up and relax, actually. That is really important to work with in your practice, to familiarize yourself with. Really important. So that's two methods. One is broadening out, the bigger container of awareness, and the other is kind of either leaning in or going in, but with this perspective of, can I see change here? Can I notice change within this experience? Yeah. Sometimes because of that, you've added that in, it's also a bit fascinating, you're interested. Maybe you've never done that before. Because generally what's kind of happening is there's unpleasant sensation, there's a sort of distance from it. You're not quite with it. It's sort of there, it's nagging, you don't really want it, but it is there. And it's like, oh, so what happens then if I just start to sort of edge towards, turn towards? Can I notice that as change? Then maybe the last thing that I will say is so sometimes it's said that with mindfulness or with awareness comes choice. So what that means is that there's unpleasant physical sensation in your experience. I've already said that with this sense of broadening out, like kind of the bigger container of awareness, it means that there's lots of possibilities to what might arise in your experience. But one of the things that will probably be arising somewhere is pleasure. So, and again, this is important to sort of notice, where in my body do I experience pleasure? Start to get used to that. So for me, one of the areas is my hands. So when I take my attention into my hands, what I feel is like a kind of physical tingling. And that's pleasurable. So make a choice, like kind of, okay, so this is unpleasant physical experience, so it could be that I've got this thing in my back. So what is it like? Again, this sense of playing. What is it like if I just take my attention at this moment to my hands? What happens? Well, I feel quite energized. So sometimes the sensation reduces or disappears, or just the fact that you've took your attention somewhere else, it becomes a bit more kind of manageable, really. But that is really important with this thing about this idea of practice, that practice is about pain. I've got to stay with pain. This is what Buddhism is about, staying with pain, going through pain. No. There's a whole spectrum of experience, and some of it is very pleasurable. Kind of use that as a resource. So that is kind of how we become in this sutta that is talking more about a monk, isn't it? But in a sense, you could say to be a practitioner and not to be run-of-the-mill. This is what we need to do. We need to learn. We need to learn to be with our experience. We need to learn to work with our experience. We need some tools to be able to do that. And then sometimes where we end up. Sorry, it's on the other sheet. Where we end up is with that sense of there is a gap. Actually, one last thing that I will say is that if you're with contact and feeling, so the sense of the body and feeling, which also a sense of the body can include the breath, so that's part of it. If you're able to stay with that kind of a bit consistently over time, what begins to happen is that you experience at some point more pleasure. And this is the kind of entry point. Either the entry point into higher states of consciousness comes by being with just kind of really being with the breath, but it also comes through having a broader awareness and being able just to be with that. This is why, for me, this model of either primary experience and secondary suffering is so important. If I'm just with primary experience, my whole experience is quite simple. It's not so elaborate. There's not so, and in a sense, there's actually not so much pain, really, in the sense of lots of thinking and emotion, all the rest of it. And then what begins to happen is pleasant sensation begins to arise, and it's that pleasant sensation that takes you into the kind of the first dhyana, the first absorption. So I hope that we all become, what would you say, practitioners, and move away from being a bit more run-of-the-mill. Yeah, and in a way, I hope kind of what I would encourage you to do, because this has been more me talking to you, hasn't it? Go away and try out some of these things that I've said. Yeah, the bigger container of awareness. If you want, maybe put the second one in, which is choosing. Do I want to stay with this, or do I want to find something else which is pleasurable? Maybe that's the second option. Then the third option is, what is it like to either to lean in and lean out? Can I play with that a little bit? But particularly, what happens if I begin to experience this sensation as change? What happens? Yeah, that's your kind of homework. Well, that's it.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this talk, you are warmly invited to visit Buddhistisches Tor Berlin in Kreuzberg. We offer meditation, Dharma talks, and courses that support practice in everyday life. You'll find more information in the episode description.